am so passionate about food and sharing that passion with other people. And I just love it that so many people can do that in the food blogging space. You know, you can have a blog of any size and you can do it as a full-time job, or it can just be a hobby, but it doesn't matter because that little niche of the online world is yours. And that is so awesome to me. I love that there's no barrier to entry, you know, to get into the space.
That was Kelly Senyai, and this is episode number 128 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. Thanks for joining me today. I'm your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. So what are we doing here? Well, my goal every week is to share with you thoughts, stories, interviews, everything related to food blogging so we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. So how are you today? I hope you're having a great day. I know that I am. I just have to ask you a question. Are you on the Chopped email list? I think you should be, because we've got some really exciting things coming up and I want you to be the first to know about it. And the best way to be the first to know about it is to be on our email list. All you have to do is go to choppedpodcast.com and you can sign up for the newsletter there. Okay, today is a really special treat. It's something actually a little bit different. I don't know if you know this, but I actually have another podcast. I know, you could just call me the podcast queen. That cracks me up. Anyway, yes, you can call me the podcast queen. I know that there have been a couple people who have said that about me before. But anyway, I have a podcast on Namely Marley, and I mostly talk about, vegan stuff or diet. I also talk about creativity on that podcast. It's really just like a way for my audience to kind of hear my voice, even if that seems kind of crazy, and just to kind of get to know me on a different level. And one of my early interviews was with Kelly Senyai. She's of the site Just a Taste, because I loved talking with, creative people, and I really was inspired by some of the creativity that Kelly expressed on some of her recipes. And interestingly enough, I kind of feel like it was this early interview with Kelly on the Namely Marley podcast that kind of sparked this idea in my mind of talking to more food bloggers. And that's kind of where the Chopped Podcast came from. So in some ways, it's almost like this interview is the prequel to Chopped Podcast. Yes, I have a prequel. It makes me feel very important. Anyway, Kelly was such an inspiration to talk to, and I will confess that I immediately found myself thinking that she had the perfect credentials for being a food blogger. I mean, she has a graduate degree in broadcast journalism, in addition to a culinary degree. I mean, what else could you ask for as a food blogger? I mean, of course, I say that, and, I think I've said before that food blogging is like design your own journey, right? Because there are some people, for example, there have been people on this podcast that come from the teaching background. And I think, well, that's really perfect too, because food blogging is a lot about instruction. And if you have a degree in educating, I think that, works very well. I've also talked to people that have a background in marketing and branding. I mean, wow, how perfect is that, right? So really it is food blogging is like design your own journey, and whatever background you have is perfect. I mean, of course, I know that now. When I was interviewing Kelly 2 years ago, I didn't know that. And so I feel like in some ways it's kind of nice to circle back around and just kind of have a little more confidence in that we can listen to other people's journeys and find out some of the things that they have done that have worked well for them. But at the same time, we can take our own experience and realize what we have to bring to our blogs has value, and what we have to bring to our audience has value. And I don't know, it's just like a kind of a nice culmination of all of that information. But again, I do like listening to other people's stories. It's just now, after 2 years of interviewing food bloggers and all these different people and all their different experiences, I don't know, I just feel like it's a way of listening with fresh ears and just like taking those little tidbits and kernels of information that, I don't know, can somehow make your experience even better. And I really, really enjoyed Kelly's enthusiasm for food blogging. It sounds to me like she just gets up excited about it every day. And I think sometimes it's easy to take it for granted, the exciting things that we're doing, because we get kind of busy with the work side. Don't you? Do you feel that sometimes too? Like, just one more day, I have to get on Facebook. I have to do these things. I have to do that. And I think the more I can generate this enthusiasm for what I'm doing, the happier I am. It's like I hit that sweet spot and I just love it. In fact, I mentioned to Kelly in the interview about, I think it's a Mark Twain quote. I am not entirely certain, but somebody has said somewhere along the way, if you can do what you love, then you never have to work a day in your life. And so I think that's kind of important to incorporate that feeling of love and passion and joy, even in your quote work. So I love this discussion with Kelly so much. I thought, well, you know what? I know I want to share it with you all in the Chopped podcast, even though it was really recorded for another podcast that I do. I just thought it was time to share it with you all. So just keep in mind, this was recorded a couple of years ago. It's also recorded at a different time of year. It's right before the holidays. So, there's some references to the weather and Christmas and things like that. So just, keep that in mind. Also, I want you to know that Kelly is the author of the book. I believe she said it's Food Blogging for Dummies. I'm going to leave a link to the show notes page so you can check it out. But the point here is that Kelly has really put a lot of thought into the work and the business of food blogging. And so that's why I'm calling today, the how-tos of food blogging, because there's a lot of takeaways. I think we talk about editorial calendars, which, I love talking about the behind the scene processes. So I was really, intrigued by that, and food photography. We talk about all of the things, and I think you're really going to enjoy today's discussion. So why don't we get straight to it? Here's today's feature interview with Kelly Senyai. Today's guest is Kelly Senyai. Thanks so much for being with me today, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So you and I have something in common. We're both food bloggers, and that means I have so much I want to talk with you about. But first, I wanted to ask you a question. How did you get your start with all of this?
Absolutely. Well, I kind of have had food as my passion for as long as I can remember. One of my earliest childhood memories is actually baking cookies in the kitchen with my mom. I was just 2 years old. So from the moment I could kind of hold a spatula, my mom always had me in the kitchen with her. And I think that's what really kind of got my whole passion started for food. And then it kind of grew into food media. So I started my site Just to Taste about 6 years ago. And since then, I've been to journalism grad school. I've been to culinary school. I wrote a book. I've had a lot of awesome experiences in the food media world. And now I'm running Just to Taste full time and absolutely loving every minute of it.
That's so exciting. So you got into this and you thought, I really love this, and that's when you decided to go to culinary school?
Absolutely. I thought it was one of those things, if I really wanted to do this seriously as a career, I wanted to be able to not only write about all the various aspects of the culinary industry, but if somebody were to ask me a question, or if I was interviewing chefs, which I did as part of my job when I worked at Condé Nast, and do restaurant reviews and all that, I really needed to know details and, the finite intricacies of techniques and ingredients and sourcing of ingredients. So going to culinary school for me was really a great way to kind of hone my culinary skills, of course, but also to become really credible in this space.
Yeah, I think that's probably an important feature that helps you stand out, I would imagine.
Yes, yeah, and going to culinary school was honestly one of the best decisions I ever made. It gave me so much confidence in the kitchen, and it really helped me. I went to culinary school in New York City, and so of course, food media is a huge industry there. So it really gave me a chance to get introduced to some people now who are lifelong friends and also great mentors in the space.
Yeah, and there's another thing I really like about that is, it's like in some ways you were kind of following a passion.
Absolutely. It was funny because I never thought I could be, in the food media. Like I never thought I could run my own site as a career. I always thought, okay, it would be a hobby. It would be something I would, do on the side. It's really fun. It's what I wish I could do, 24 hours a day, but I never thought I could really get there. And so I've been very fortunate just kind of laying the groundwork over the last 5 years that a year ago I left my full-time job to pursue Just to Taste full-time. And honestly, it was the best decision I ever made was to do that because I just love it. I wake up every morning and I'm just cannot wait to get started.
Oh, that's great. There's a Mark Twain. I believe it was Mark Twain. I'm from Missouri, so I love to quote him. And I think it was him that said, if you love what you do, you don't have to work a day in your life.
My dad says that to me all the time because
maybe it was your dad then. That's who heard that.
I'm one of those obnoxious people that love to work. I love it. It's just I'm so passionate about food and sharing that passion with other people, and I just love it that so many people can do that in the food blogging space. You can have a blog of any size, and you can do it as a full-time job, or it can just be a hobby, but it doesn't matter because that little niche of the online world is yours, and that is so awesome to me. I love that there's no barrier to entry, to get into the space.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's so nice to know that people it's basically their own business at some point.
Absolutely, and that's what I worked. That was my whole goal, was to get to a place where I could be running the site full time. And it did not happen overnight. I always tell people that. I've had this site for 6 years now, and I was only comfortable, just with the amount of knowledge that I had gained over the last 6 years working in the food media industry, that I could finally kind of go off and do this on my own and kind of know, that it had the potential to be a success.
Well, it sounds like you were doing a lot of other things as you were blogging too.
Yes, absolutely. So when I was in culinary school, I went to the Institute of Culinary Education in New York City, and I had an unbelievable experience there. And right before I started, I actually pitched the president of the school. I just randomly emailed him. I don't know where I got this confidence. I said, Rick, my name is Kelly. I'm going to be a student there in the fall. I noticed that you guys don't have a blog and that you don't have, you don't have a presence on social media. I would love to launch the official blog for the school. I'll take photos. I'll chronicle my whole experience as a culinary school student. I'll do all of your social media. And he emailed me back almost instantly, and he said, because I said I was coming from, journalism school, and I was doing this to be a food journalist, and he said, is this for real? Can you hop on a call? And it was one of those things. I was so happy I took that risk. So I started the blog for them. I was in school full time. I ended up being at the Food Network then for my stage. In order to graduate from culinary school, you have to do an apprenticeship. I was in the Food Network kitchens, had an unbelievable experience there.
How
and
cool.
I was in my last, it was so much fun. And I was on my last week there of my stage. We were working on Iron Chef. It was amazing, incredible energy. And I got a call from Condé Nast that they were bringing back Gourmet in digital form as Gourmet Live. And that led to 3 amazing years at Condé Nast as an online editor, and I also did all of their kind of television and videos and all of that, and was at Epicurious then, and finally decided this experience has been amazing, but I'm so passionate about just the taste, I've got to do it full time, and so that's where I'm at now.
But wow, that gave you a lot of great experience seeing the,
It did.
the underbelly of the publishing world.
That is so true. That is so true, and I am so thankful to have had that experience and then to apply all of those things I learned to my site now.
How cool that all started from the fact that you made this, the word that comes to mind is impulsive, but I'm sure you put a little more thought into it than that. This email and all this probably resulted from that.
Oh my gosh, I could not tell you. You look back on life and there's you could have gone left or you could have gone right, and your life would be totally different. And I always think back to that moment when I hit send on that email and just thinking, oh my God, I'm so glad that I just put myself out there and went for it, because I have learned that now, since that moment, if there's something you really want, you have to go after it and you have to ask for it, and no one's going to give it to you, and you have to work your butt off, and you have to earn it. So I'm so glad I made that decision, and it really did, I think, set me up for everything else that's happened over the last 6 years.
Yeah, I have an MBA, and it's funny because I always think back on my finance class, which wasn't one of my favorite classes, but the professor said this thing I thought was really profound, because he said, oftentimes the investment that you make that has the greatest risk also has the greatest reward. So that kind of makes me think of your story. Yeah. I
love that. Yes, and my dad's an entrepreneur, and I think that's honestly between his entrepreneurial background and my mom's just love of cooking. Those two things kind of came together. Both became my passions, and I took that risk, and I am so happy that I did.
Well, can you share with me your cookie your monster cookie story, because I just think it so it explains why we do this food blogging thing.
Absolutely. Oh, you mean just, is it being one of the, or like how Just a Taste got its name, or which story specifically?
I think it was on your site somewhere that you talked about how it was one of the first recipes that you made, and that it turned into this thing that it's like one of the most popular,
Yes.
posts on your site and gets shared so many times.
Yes. So the whole reason I started Just a Taste was I was in journalism grad school at the time, and I was on working in hard news. So I was doing politics, and I was doing, all these kind of really hard news stories that were emotionally draining. I was based in the South Bronx, and it was a wonderful experience, and I really learned how to be a great reporter and a great journalist from all of it. But I would come home every night and cook as just a way to decompress. And people kept asking me for my mom's recipes. My mom is an unbelievable cook. She has these baby back ribs, which are off the charts. She did these monster cookies, which honestly to this day are one of the most popular posts on the whole site. And so I thought, you know what, rather than continuing to email everyone these, recipes, Word documents literally, I'm just going to put them up on a site so I can send them a quick link, and I'll throw some photos up there so they can see what it looks like. And one thing led to another, and now there's over 500 recipes on the site. It has just become my absolute baby. I live and breathe Just a Taste. And the whole name Just a Taste actually came from my grandmother, who's a great cook as well. She says there's always room for just a taste of dessert. So I'm a big believer in moderation, that you should never skip out on dessert, even if you just have a little piece of chocolate or something. So it's definitely been kind of in my family blood that, food and entrepreneurialism, and I just kind of put those two things together.
Yeah, that's an interesting food philosophy too, because I think it's easy to create, desserts are bad for you, don't ever eat them, but eating them in moderation is so important.
Absolutely, and that's what I tell people, kind of like the unsexy kind of whole goal behind Just a Taste is moderation without elimination. So I don't believe in putting anything on the do not eat list. I don't believe in diets. Like, donuts are my favorite food on the planet. And if I feel like a donut, I'm going to eat a donut. I'm not going to eat, a whole box of donuts, but I'm going to eat one, and I'm going to enjoy every single bite of it. And that's where Just a Taste came from.
That's great. And I love it that it came from your grandmother too. That's very cool.
Yeah. I literally jumped out of bed at 2:00 in the morning when that came to me. I was trying to think of a name for this site. And I was thinking something with my name and a Kelly's Kitchen and all this. And I was like, Just a Taste. And so I hurried and looked, and I ended up having to buy the domain name from some guy in Germany. I asked for it for like a Christmas present. And I'm so glad I did. I had the foresight to do that. So yeah, it's come a long way in the last 6 years.
That's great. I talk to a lot of people who it seems like their career paths meander over the years and go in different directions, but you seem to have honed in on what you've wanted to do from a young age. Was there ever a time you thought maybe you wanted to do something different?
Honestly, looking back, all through college, I would host dinner parties, and I was constantly baking. And I went to undergrad for communications, so I always knew I wanted to be in the journalism field. I thought about going into sports reporting. I'm a huge sports enthusiast. I love football, baseball, basketball, you name it. I'm a total sports fanatic. And I just never thought it would be possible to pursue food media as a full-time career, especially, 10 or 12 years ago when the industry wasn't as big and booming as it is now. It was kind of, I was the oddball in my class that was really into food. Even when I was in grad school, 5 or 6 years ago, food was not what it is now in terms of the presence and the power that it has in media. So I just kind of stayed the course because it was all I was honestly interested in. Anytime we were given an assignment in grad school for a story, I would somehow get food worked into it. Food would somehow become the angle. And one thing led to the other, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to pursue it. This is honestly all I care about, all my passion. And it worked out, which is very lucky.
I bet people liked making friends with you.
Yes. Oh, I know. All my professors always said how fat I made them. And I was like, oh. But you enjoyed every bite, didn't you?
But see, that's another great thing about food is it creates such a sense of community.
Absolutely. And that's honestly one of the things I love about working in the food industry is when you go to like a party or an event or anything, anyone and everyone can have an opinion about food because we can all eat and we can all, cook to some degree or like to cook to some degree or even just go out to a restaurant. But everybody can talk about food. Everybody can have an opinion on it. And that's what I love so much is it just connects people on such a universal level that everybody can have a say. And some people turn that say, into a blog, and some people are just avid cooks and never take a photo, a day in their lives. But regardless, I just love that it's so inclusive.
Yeah. Your food photography is just amazing, stunning. And I'm just curious.
Thank you.
Did you take food photography in journalism school or photography in general?
I did not. No, I'm actually entirely self-taught in both photography and food styling. Of course, I picked up some amazing tips when I worked at Food Network and also at Gourmet Live then. I watched food stylists in action. Never really had a chance to try my own hand at it there, but just kind of watched and just soaked up every single little tip that I could, and just practice and practice and practice with both the styling and the photography. And that's kind of my comfort zone. That's my calming place. Like right after we do this interview, I'm making a leftover cranberry sauce and apple crisp, and I just cannot wait to get into the kitchen. I put the music on. I just kind of zone out, and it's my happy place for sure.
That's one thing I have to agree with you. I love food photography as part of my day because so much of my day I end up sitting in front of the computer, and I'm a really physical person. I like being up and about and moving. And food photography, man, I break into a sweat when I'm doing it. It's work.
Oh, I'll have to wear workout clothes. I mean, it's almost embarrassing. It's like I don't go to the gym half the time because I'm sweating so much by the end of it. It's like, forget it.
Yes, it's not something I expected from that, but I love it.
No, I know. I always joke, and I wrote a book called Food Blogging for Dummies, and there's all these references to contorting your body. I mean, I'm climbing up on things, I'm leaning over, I'm balancing, I've got one arm doing this, one arm doing that.
Yep.
It's like a sweatband on because
yeah. Because you're running back and forth, you got the scene set up what you think you want, and then you look in the camera and you think, oh, that's got to move, and you're constantly going back and forth. And
exactly.
Yes.
Major League Food Styling, I'm telling you, it's a new sport.
I love it. We could start a workout book.
Exactly.
So what's your camera you use?
I use a Nikon D7000, and I oftentimes shoot with an 18-105 millimeter lens. I like to be super close on the food.
Yeah.
You'll notice in a lot of my photos, I'm not real big on props. I love the food photographers who stage these amazingly gorgeous tables with all the plates and all that. And I'm a big entertainer myself, and I love to do all that stuff. But when it comes time to photographing food for the site, I really pride myself in the step-by-step photos. Every single recipe on the site has a minimum of 4 photos with it because I like people to be able to cook along and have visual cues because, that helps everybody out. And maybe it turns out the way it looks on the site, maybe it looks slightly different, but at least you have some sort of gauge. So I shoot a lot of photos. I probably shoot, maybe 100 to 125 shots per recipe, only because I'm stopping every 10 minutes in the cooking process to take a photo. And a lot of those photos don't end up making it on the site because, honestly, it would be 90 photos per post.
Yeah.
But I like to capture every single moment that's critical in the recipe so that people really have a sense of, what it should look like throughout the process.
And then do you put those into one collage, or they're all separate photos on the...
I don't. They're all separate photos, and people can kind of follow along with the recipe. Sometimes I'll reference, a certain photo in the recipe description itself. But then, of course, on Pinterest, so many people make all of the photos into a collage, as we all know, the famous collage bins on Pinterest. So those tend to do really well, and a lot of people find the site just because of that, how-to factor. They like to know, my whole premise is, besides the moderation, is easy but impressive. So anything you find on my site is not going to call for any crazy ingredients. It's going to look like it took 5 hours to make, but it's probably going to take you about 30 minutes. And that goes for everything from breakfast to dessert.
And that takes time, I know, from the back end for you to be able to take a complex recipe and break it down so that it's easy for people to do.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I love because entertaining, I love to entertain. And we don't all have 6 sous chefs and assistants and everyone else helping us when we're throwing dinner parties. So you want to do something that looks awesome, but that also is doable and doesn't totally stress you out. And so a lot of the recipes that I create are for that exact purpose. You can do this for a dinner party. It's going to look awesomely impressive, but you're going to actually have a glass of wine in your hand the whole time and be able to be a part of the dinner party and not just hosting it.
And listening to great music while you're at it, right?
Exactly, jamming out the whole time. I'm a big dancer while I cook. I'm one of those people, and I have a little puppy, and he's jumping around, waiting for the inevitable scrap to fall off the counter. So,
Yeah.
It's quite the party here Monday through Friday. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, my favorite times are if I'm in the kitchen and I've got some James Taylor going, I am just one happy person.
Exactly.
How sweet it is. Yeah.
Yep. So true.
So I noticed that you wrote that book, Food Blogging for Dummies, and you mentioned that earlier. And I'm just curious, what was it what was the background that caused that to happen?
Absolutely. So Food Blogging for Dummies was an amazing experience. I wrote the book, did all the photography for it. Wow. It's 320 pages. It basically tells you anything and everything you could possibly want to know about starting, launching, and maintaining a food blog. And it's one of those things I get, emails every week from people saying, I'm so new to this space. This is awesome. I was able to get my blog up and running. But then I also get emails from people saying, I've been a food blogger for 6 years or 7 years, and I didn't know X, Y, or Z. And I'm so glad, you brought that up. It covers everything: ad revenue, marketing the site, which photo sites to submit your food photographs to in order to get more traffic, which hosting, I think is best, and that sort of thing. So I was actually approached by Wiley Publishing, who's the publisher of all of the For Dummies series, which are, the very famous black and white or black and yellow covers. Mm-hmm. And they cover every sort of kind of how-to angle. And they said, we want to do food blogging for dummies. We saw Just a Taste. We saw about your journalism background. Would you be interested? And so I spent 2 weeks writing this 30-page proposal, the competitive analysis, wow. How I would market the book and all of that. And I got chosen as the author, and I had 8 months from start to finish, and it was on shelves then about a year later. And it was just an awesome experience. It really gave me a chance to meet a ton of people in the industry and have an excuse to reach out to, some of the biggest bloggers in the space. And so I'm really proud of it. I think it turned out fantastic. And
what a great resource for people just starting out.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And people, I still get emails. The book was out about 2 years ago now. It might even be 3 years. That's bad. I don't even know that. Mm-hmm. But I still get emails from people saying, I just picked up a copy of the book. And it still thrills me to walk into Barnes & Noble and see the book on the shelves. And I just get the biggest kick out of it. So
I
it
bet.
Was an awesome experience. Yeah.
Well, and I noticed that you've got some of your recipes and photographs have been published in things like People Magazine and O Magazine and Better Homes and Gardens too, I think, right?
Yes, yeah. It was on People.com, Oprah,
yes.
The Oprah Magazine, Better Homes and Gardens. I've done a lot of work for them. They're fantastic to work with. FoodNetwork.com. I've really been very lucky and fortunate to get some applause from some of the, all of the sites and the magazines that I love reading on a daily basis. So I've been very, very lucky and appreciate, obviously, all that love.
Yes. So I noticed that you mentioned earlier that you travel between 2 different cities, and not just 2 different cities, Los Angeles and New York. That's quite a big gap. How do you keep your life straight?
Yes.
How do you do it all?
Well, I love it. I lived in New York full-time for 6 years before I kind of relocated to the LA area. And it's amazing because the food scenes are so different on each coast. And it's been a really interesting and fascinating kind of adjustment to understand the West Coast food scene in contrast to New York and the East Coast. And I have so many friends there, and I still have so much business there. So I just make the time to go back and forth. And I went to school, obviously, in New York, both journalism school and culinary school. So I have a lot of friends and mentors still there. And so I just kind of balance both. I love going, back and forth and staying in touch with people all over the place because palates are so different everywhere and trends are so different. And it's just been really interesting to see, what ingredients kind of fly in LA versus New York and how things take off.
Yeah. Do you ever feel, harried? And how do you you're sitting down at the computer and you've got these, 50 things you've got to get done. Do you have any productivity tips that you use?
I'm a big believer in only flying on airlines with Wi-Fi. I cannot waste 6 hours on a flight without internet. I will have a panic attack if I land to 250 emails. I can't do it. So I only fly on airlines that have Wi-Fi. Honestly, it sounds like a crazy tip, but it is life-changing. So that's huge. And I'm so scheduled. I think one of the biggest tips I took from working in the publishing industry for so long is to really have a strict editorial calendar. And I work very far ahead. So, magazines have an average of a 6-month lead time on everything they create. I obviously don't work that far ahead because I like to stay very much on trend. So let's say an ingredient pops up or something, goes viral with some sort of technique. I like to be able to adjust my editorial calendar and jump in and do my spin on those things. But like right now I have recipes all photographed, shot, ready to publish for like the next month and a half. And so I really pride myself on working ahead and just sticking to an editorial calendar so that I can really plan out and think strategically, okay, this recipe is going to be great here, or this trend is happening now, so I'm going to publish this then. Like, for example, right now, these last 2 weeks, I've been all about Thanksgiving leftovers. Because at this point, most people's, Thanksgiving menus are set, and they're just kind of reading, being online, and then eventually they're going to be looking for ways to use all those leftovers. Right. So it's just kind of thinking like that and really tuning my brain into what readers are looking for, because ultimately I just want to be useful to people.
Oh, that's great. My friend Dana with Minimalist Baker, I don't know if you know that site, but
yeah, oh yeah.
That's what she does. She works ahead, and we got together a couple of times and talked, and she, it's been a great inspiration for me because I have not worked that way. I've always, kind of working on the fly, and this whole idea of working ahead. So I've started being more purposeful about that, and I love it. It gives me such a sense of freedom in the day.
It so does. And let's say something comes up last minute, like life is life. Random things happen all the time. Right. I like to feel calm, cool, and collected. Okay, the posts are done for next week. Even if I have to take the next 3 days off for, whatever reason, the sites, there will still be fresh content on the site. No matter what, Thursday mornings, Monday mornings, Friday newsletter, there will always be new content on the site.
Yes, and it's a relief not to have that pressure. I think it almost kind of releases the creative juices too. It makes me feel more creative in my writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I make all my recipes multiple times between cross-testing. If I don't like the photography on something, I'll reshoot it. I shoot with all natural light. So luckily in California, we're pretty blessed to have sunlight all the time, but some days are cloudier than others. Some days, I just don't like the way something turned out, so I'll reshoot it. And I just like having the freedom of the time to do that.
Right. Whereas if you're under the crunch, you might be tempted just to publish anyway. And,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I found that it also requires a little bit of self-discipline because, so let me just confess to you that I went ahead and worked ahead a little bit. And then I woke up with this idea, of a recipe, and, it was timely. I had to interject it. And I thought, I had this plan. And I didn't even stick to it.
Well, but that also gives you the freedom to kind of roll with the punches. And so let's say something does come up, you can move things. Like I'm constantly moving around posts. Like if something turned out really well and I've teased it on Facebook and there's a ton of traction, people are already talking about, well, where's the recipe? I'm not going to hold off a week and a half to publish it while it's like hot. I'm going to go ahead and bump it up. So I like kind of having that freedom to adjust my schedule as needed.
Do you have like a WordPress schedule that you use, or do you are you?
No, I actually am a huge fan of the Gmail calendar, and I have my Gmail calendar is like a rainbow. It is like the most it's a hot mess of activity, but to me it makes sense, which is all that matters. And I like that I can see it, from my phone or any other computer. So I keep everything in my Gmail calendar, and that is my editorial calendar. That's my personal calendar. It just kind of keeps my entire life organized.
And then you can easily move a recipe around in there as well.
Exactly. And I like that I have all the holidays plotted on it, so I can see, okay, if Thanksgiving's falling on a Thursday, I'm going to want to run this at least 3 weeks in advance. And it's really easy to drag and drop. So I love Gmail calendars for that.
That is great. That is really good. Okay, so I'm curious, Kelly, what advice would you give to somebody who is just now thinking about starting a food blog?
I would tell them to not wait until they think everything is perfect on their site to launch. A lot of people tell me, I have this site built, I'm all set to go, but, I don't like this, I don't like that. I just tell people, just start. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. There's always things that you're going to want to be tweaking and changing and adjusting and bettering. And to this day, there's still things on my site that I'm changing all of the time. But if you don't at least start the site, there's nothing to really work with and mold. So I always tell people, get 10 posts up before you start announcing to the world that you have this food blog, because you want people, the first time they lay eyes on your site, to kind of get entrenched and be poking around and to not just see one post and think, okay, one post, I don't have anything else to read. So have at least a minimum of 10 posts up before you kind of do the official launch. And then just keep working at it and know the things that are your strengths and know the things that you want to get better at. So if you're awesome at food photography, but you want to focus on your writing, just kind of make goals for yourself each week of the things that you want to get better at. And everybody has different strengths, and everybody has a different amount of time they can devote to their site too. And I think that's one of the biggest things being in this space, whether you're doing it as a hobby or as a business. We all have different, crazy life schedules and different amounts of time. But at the end of the day, you devote the amount of time you can to it, and don't gauge or look at other people's sites as competition. I mean, we're all kind of in this together. It's a great community. You can learn from each other. I have some of my best friends in the food blogging industry, and who do the exact same thing I do. So just get started. Know that there are always going to be changes and things that you want to improve.
Oh, that's great advice. My friend Rhonda, she loves to say, like best next time. And my interpretation of that is, do your best today and then do your best again tomorrow. And, every day just keep doing the best that you can. And that's how you get better at something.
Exactly. I completely agree.
So what's next for you, Kelly? Anything that you can share with us?
Yes, I'm working on some, getting everything set up for next year right now. I'm working on a couple of new options for online video series.
Great.
I've got a lot of fun stuff coming up on the site through the holidays, which I'm very excited about. I also always have plans way down the line. I think I'd love to do a cookbook, so I'm always kind of just jotting down ideas for that. Yeah. As we all know, holiday season for food bloggers is the biggest.
Yes,
so we're
huge.
heading into that right now.
Yeah.
Which is always fun and hectic at the same time. But yeah, I'm really excited for next year. I think now that I've had a full year of doing this full time under my belt, I've learned so much, and I'm just excited about pursuing some bigger projects for next year. So,
oh, that's great. Okay, just a couple of fun questions to end it up with. So tell me, what's the favorite app on your iPhone?
Oh gosh, a classic, but the best, Instagram. I'm addicted. I'm straight up addicted. I'm late to the Instagram game.
Me too.
So I didn't really get on the whole bandwagon at first. I didn't understand it. It's not a traffic driver yet. So I was kind of just, I didn't know what to think of it. But oh my gosh, I spend way too much time on Instagram.
What's your profile? Is it at Just a Taste?
Just a Taste. At Just a Taste. Yes.
I'll leave the link in the show notes. That'd be great.
Thank you. That would be great.
That actually answers the next question I was going to ask you, and that is, what's your favorite social media platform?
Oh, you know what? I love Instagram, but to be honest, I absolutely love Facebook. Unlike I love Pinterest too, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I love about Facebook, it's like an instant, direct interaction with all the readers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on Facebook. I don't outsource any of my social media. I'm a big believer. I do it all myself just because that's my direct contact with my audience. And that's what I love, and that's why I do this. So I sit on Facebook all day long answering questions, responding to comments. There's such a great community on the Just a Taste Facebook page, and everyone's very engaged, and I just absolutely love Facebook. So
I love too that you can just put a question out there, and your audience will respond. Like, what are your favorite Thanksgiving recipes? And they just go crazy.
Exactly. And I poll them all the time. I say, fill in the blank. I could really use a great recipe for blank. And then, that starts filling up my editorial calendar just by the responses alone.
So do you have a favorite source of inspiration?
I kind of draw inspiration from all over. I love dining out only because I get so many ideas of how to recreate restaurant dishes at home then, and like we said earlier, kind of put an easier spin on them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my inspiration just comes from dining out or just shopping at the grocery store. If I find an ingredient or something, is just in season right now or on sale. I mean, I look for inspiration everywhere.
That's great. That's you're an inspiration to many people too.
Oh, well, thank you.
And tell me, I know you've mentioned a couple of things, but how can people find you online?
Yes, so my site is justataste.com, and I always tell people I actually put my email address in the Food Blogging for Dummies book and get emails all the time, and I welcome them. I love answering questions. I respond to every single email I get to the absolute best of my ability. So my email is kelly@justataste.com, and then I am on every single social media platform you can imagine. On Facebook, you can just search for Just a Taste. I'm on Twitter @Just a Taste, Instagram @Just a Taste, and on Pinterest is @Just a Taste.
Wonderful. Kelly, it's been such a pleasure talking with you today.
You too. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to staying in touch, and early happy holidays.
Yes, you too. Thanks to Kelly Senyai for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Just stop what you're doing right now and go to choppedpodcast.com. Of course, you want to learn more about today's show, so you can check out the show notes page, but you also want to sign up for our newsletter so you'll be the first to hear about the exciting things coming your way very soon. You know, I get emails and DMs from people almost every day saying how much they're loving the Chopped Podcast. You can't imagine how much that makes me so happy. If anything I do helps contribute to your entrepreneurial, creative journey, well, I'm just tickled pink about it. I love it. I also want to say a big thank you to everyone for your reviews of the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and social media as well. Please keep spreading the word. It really makes a difference. You inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Now, go forth and be your best you.